Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. And this week I've got the honour of being joined by Chris Coté. A lot of you will know him, but for those that don't, Chris, how are you doing?
Doing great. How are you? Whoa. Yeah, I was doing great, and then I dropped my phone.
Yeah,
Now I'm doing great again.
amazing. So can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what's led you to this moment?
Well, what led me to this wonderful podcast is my life as an action sports enthusiast. Grew up here in North County, San Diego, California. Started skating, surfing very early on in life, and through that love of those things, I worked my way to a B C level pro surfer, and from there, after one trip to Hawaii, I realized that I probably should get a different job because I was pretty terrified of the giant waves over there. And so I worked my way into a bunch of different marketing positions and stuff like that through the surf industry. 1999, I helped start a magazine called Transworld Surf. Through that magazine, started doing television spots for Fuel TV in working as a commentator for surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding events. And through all that, I have somehow stayed relevant in the action sports landscape. Currently, am an announcer for the WSL Championship Tour, various surf, skate, snow events, as well as my own podcast called The Monday Mass with Chris Coté and Todd Richards, which we'll be recording in about 45 minutes. So we're on the same podcast schedule here.
Nice, amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about your time as a sort of pro surfer before Hawaii sort of shook your bones a little bit?
Well, I was coming up in the mid 90s, started off mostly just filming video parts and doing some contests. And then I got a little bit more serious about it, entered some of the bigger events like the US Open at the time, the Coldwater Classic up in Santa Cruz, won a contest in Japan because I'm a small wave enthusiast. So that played right into my wheelhouse. Did that for, a couple years, got some photos in Surfer, Surfing Magazine, wrote some articles for those magazines as well. And that kind of ignited my love for writing about surfing in particular. I guess, pro, it means you're getting paid to surf. So I had some good sponsors that were paying me to try to get photos to do well in contests. And that lasted probably about 4 or 5 years. And then, just, like I just realized that if you wanted to be at a high level of professional surfing, I had skills again in small waves. I could do airs and all that stuff. But when I got my first taste of like what it really meant to be pro, meaning that you had to surf everything at an elite level, I kind of realized that maybe surfing should be my passion for fun, and I could parlay that passion into still working in the surf industry. So still being able to surf as much as possible, but not having the pressure to compete, to try to get photos, to try to risk my neck surfing big waves. So with all that kind of being said, I think I enjoyed the best of both worlds because I was still able to surf as much as anyone and travel, but I didn't have the pressure to perform really.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great shout, and it's not a cheap thing to do either, is it? Like before you get all the sponsors or the big sponsors, like I think it was that documentary with Adriano de Souza, and he was saying it was along the lines of like 50,000 a year just to pretty much be on the tour and turn up to most of the spots. It's so you've really got to put
Yeah,
the hours in, like outside of that, outside of the training, looking after your body, eating right, traveling, just to get the
yeah,
money
exactly.
together. So it's insane. In terms of training, just out of curiosity, did you? Because obviously this we focus a lot on the coaching and progression side of surfing on the podcast. What sort of stuff did you do to maintain a certain level of fitness? Was it more? I know 90s like surf strength and conditioning wasn't quite where it is now. And it's funny actually
Yeah.
watching like going from having Corky, Bo Young, Sean Thompson, yourself. Mitch was probably the one that's done the most sort of training there is for surfing, by the sounds of it. What was it like in the mid-90s as a small wave shortboarder?
My training was skateboarding, eating candy, eating a lot of cereal. I didn't drink or do any drugs or anything until I was 21. So it was kind of, I guess, clean living in my 20s and late teens. So that, I guess, could be perceived as sort of a kind of training. But I was so skinny and tiny that nowadays, yeah, I got to run and stuff like that and try to like eat right. But back then, I could eat anything I wanted, and I was still the tiniest guy. And so, yeah, my training was pretty much just eating candy and surfing as much as possible, skateboarding when I wasn't surfing. So, I guess the most anti-training type of
Yeah,
training.
amazing. Yeah, like I say, it's definitely
This is this is pre Mick Fanning, in the gym, and pre health food stores. We didn't have Whole Foods or creatine or like supplements back then. It was like Slurpees and Twix bars and Skittles.
yeah, quick, easy hits of sugar to keep you going, stop you falling asleep. Yeah, perfect. So you obviously sort of spread yourself out a little bit after that, didn't you? So in terms of you went commentating for the skateboard and snowboarding, can you talk us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so through some of the event sponsorships that we would get through Transworld Surf, I would always try to insert myself in any opportunity that I could get. I would volunteer for any job at the time, whether it was janitor, editor in chief, whatever. I just wanted to do as much as possible. So we had the opportunity to sponsor the U.S. Open early on in probably '99 or 2000 ish, and so I basically made it known that I was available and very excited to try my hand at announcing. And so, through that, I got the opportunity to do that. Almost blew it a couple times because at this point I was kind of partying a lot. And, again, anti training, not good if you want to be a professional sports announcer. So I practiced via a show that I put on an early, I guess, little interview vlog called Cote's Cube. So basically, whenever a pro surfer would come into the office, we would just turn on the video camera and go back and forth, ask a couple questions, kind of like this. Those were more 3 to 6 minute episodes, but just through repetition, I started to develop, I guess, a announcing style. And so, doing Cote's Cube and then getting the opportunity to announce some events for what was then the ASP, I just kind of kept wedging my foot in the door. Didn't really give them a choice not to hire me. And so it just kind of started growing. And then I got the opportunity to do some actual live show hosting for Fuel TV, a show called The Daily Habit. So I was kind of the second host. So in case something happened to the first host, which at the time was Pat Parnell, who I would watch and study, I would get the chance to go host that show, and we did 3 or 4 shows a day. So it was pretty quick study in how to run a live show. Ins and outs, commercial breaks, live interviews, just real quick, fast paced, type of show running. And so that really helped me and informed me for eventual commentary gigs. And so through my surf commentary, getting, more reps there, I basically raised my hand more and more for opportunities to announce skateboarding events. I eventually started doing like Dew Tour for skate and snow. And so it's kind of just the more you build your resume with those events, the more firepower you have to go into a meeting and let the people know who are hiring that you're capable and willing and ready to jump into really any sport. So since then,
Mm.
started with surf, expanded to surf, skate, snow, and over the past few years, there's been more interesting new kind of opportunities in the announcing world. I hosted the last 3 years this giant parkour event called Kings of the Concrete, which is super fun. And my son is like a huge parkour athlete. He's super into it. And so that was basically his doing, getting me into that world. I mean, I've announced everything from the one wheel race championships, whatever you got, I'll
Yeah,
at least try it. Some of it I'm pretty good at. Others, I try it once and probably don't do it again. But any kind of live events, hosting most sports that involve any type of speed, power, flow, I feel totally comfortable with. So, and I'm in a band, I DJ, so I have no nerves or no problem getting in front of a live crowd, big or small. That's just kind of one of my strengths.
Mm,
I have many, many other weaknesses, but in that world, I feel pretty confident that I can announce or host any type of event, broadcast, sport. Throw it at me, I'll do it.
amazing. Yeah, you got to play to the strengths at the end of the day, haven't you? I might have to pick your brains on a few little tips and tricks. I don't know if you've heard, the UK's actually got its first Surf and Skate Expo this September, which I've just found out actually.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's being sponsored by Surfer Magazine as well, which is cool. So I think Sean Thompson's coming over to do a presentation. But I went and decided it was a good idea to say to Chris Thompson, that's sort of heading the event, oh yeah, I'll do one on surf training, and the topic, fine. Then I was like, there's about 1,000 people. Awesome, cool. Right,
You
I,
got
I can
this.
talk to a camera.
I
That's
think as
absolutely
long as
fine.
you're passionate about something,
Yeah,
as long as you're passionate about something and you can, you obviously speak well, so it's like you put those two things together and you'll be able to grab any crowd and get them excited.
I think I'm gonna be physically grabbing a crowd and getting them come up and do some squats and lunges and God knows
There you
what. Be like,
go.
right, come on, guys, that's it. Don't make me talk all the way through this. We all know what training is. You just don't want to do it.
Get physical.
Yeah, that's it. Get your backsides up here and have some fun. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So, if in terms of location, I know that you enjoy everything anyway, but where's been your favourite place that you've travelled, and whether that's for work or just for surfing? Where would you go back to again tomorrow if you could?
I always enjoy a trip to Japan. I've been there a bunch of times for all, surf, skate, and snowboarding.
Mm,
For surfing, I did some ISA events there that were incredible. Obviously, I did the Olympics there. It's a little bittersweet because it was at the tail end of COVID, so it wasn't quite the magical Olympic experience that we all wanted. But I got to see and kind of really get embedded into the Japanese surfing scene, which I absolutely love. For skating, downtown Tokyo for some major skateboarding events. There's nothing like cruising around Tokyo at night with some friends and just really, it's like everywhere you look, the sights, the sounds, the tastes, everything is just incredible. And then snowboarding up north in Hokkaido is has ruined me for snowboarding anywhere else in the world because it's that good. We work with a company called Mint Tours
mm.
that we now go once a year with, and it's just like I don't, other than Mammoth Mountain, maybe right here, I don't really need to snowboard anywhere else in the world ever. So I think Japan's probably my favorite destination. For surf specific. You can't, in terms of being at an event with energy and excitement, you can't do better than Rio. The Sakurama WSL Championship Tour event is insanely fun. The crowd is just like nothing you've ever seen, and their crowd is really, they're true surf fans. So while people might get the idea that they're really like only there to cheer on Brazilian surfers, they're there to cheer on great surfing.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of like something that you really only see on that broadcast, because we see things in the message boards and on social media, like Brazilian fans just specifically cheering for Brazilian surfers. But when you're there on the beach, I mean, these fans, somebody does a big air, somebody does something crazy, they're cheering for that no matter what the flag on the surfer's
Yeah.
shoulder is. So I think that event really is probably the most exciting to be physically at, just because of the beach, the crowd. It's like it's incredible.
Nice. Yeah, I mean the Brazilians are full of passion anyway, aren't they? If there's something they enjoy, then they definitely
Yeah,
go sort of all in on that. I mean, I spent like time in
yeah.
Portugal myself, and I love the country. I've spent more time down on the Algarve rather than sort of Peniche and Ericeira, but I have passed through. But again, it's it's just one of them places that I don't know, although it is a Western country, you've got quite an old school feel, especially in Portugal. But when everyone does sort of come together, I've been to a few sort of
Yeah.
what do you call it? Almost like a carnival type thing over there, and the atmosphere is just incredible. So I can imagine if they're cheering on one of their own and like Islo's just busted some kind of 360, it must absolutely erupt on the beach over there.
Yeah.
So, so can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit
It's
more?
like, I mean,
Carry on.
oh no, go ahead.
No, just going to switch it towards.
I was just going to say what I've been seeing.
I'll let you carry on. This delay's getting in there a little bit.
I was just going to add that I love what I've been seeing happening in Australia right now on the Gold Coast. Those massive crowds with the big concerts and stuff in between events just looks really special and really fun. I love that the WSL has added that kind of entertainment factor to those events. Very cool.
Yeah, amazing. On the subject of events, obviously we've had Ryan Crosby come in from I think May last year, and I don't know what the feeling was like from the pros and that, obviously, but I know just gauging on what a lot of sort of weekend warrior surfers and a lot of the UK and others, the sort of the setup was never completely sort of enjoyed by everybody. I don't think in terms of like spectators. There's a lot of complaints, wasn't there, over the last 4 or 5 years about the final five, the mid-season cut, and everything else. Obviously, Ryan's just sort of done away with that already for next year. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that's going to be playing out?
Yeah, well, I mean, first I just say like I'm hired event to event, so I'm not I wasn't privy to this information before the rest of us, and I'm just as excited as everybody else is about it. I feel like they had to try something. I just feel like the midseason cut, the final five. I really enjoyed elements of that. But now with this new announcement, I think it's just the perfect thing to do right now. I love the idea of crowning the champion back at Pipeline. To me, that's the ultimate pinnacle of the championship tour. I'm excited to see the kind of the playoff part of the tour as well. There's kind of those subtle things that they're hanging on to a little bit, bringing into 2026. The biggest news, the biggest announcements, I think have everybody not only excited but just also breathing a sigh of relief. It's like surfers, for the most part, and surf fans are very stubborn, and we're sentimental, and we like things how we, grew up with them. When everything was radically changed and altered, a lot of people just couldn't quite fathom why they were doing this. But I think it was a great test. It got a lot of attention, on the championship tour. And I think that the champions that were crowned in those final five events are totally worthy. And being part of three final five events so far, it's to me that was like an amazing day. That to me was like the pinnacle of a pro surf event, that head-to-head thing. And I think there's opportunity to keep that style of event in other, like in golf they have the majors, right? Or like the whatever the final event. NASCAR has it, the racing thing where it's like, okay, here's the best of the best, they're going to compete. Maybe that'll be something down the line, but I just think the champion being crowned at the end of the season, the cumulative points is the most important thing. So I know what they were trying. I know that the idea was to make it this exciting one day thing where it's like everyone still has a chance, because the feeling in the past was maybe it was a little bit anticlimactic to have somebody win in Portugal or somebody win in two events leading up to Pipeline, and it kind of like fizzled at the end. But I still think that even if someone does clinch the title early on, that's going to be as exciting, if not more exciting, than what had happened in the past couple of
Mm.
years. But I was a fan of the midseason cut. I was a fan of the Final Five, and I'm going to be equally as big a fan of ending it at Pipeline, which I think is kind of like a no-brainer. I think that everybody, finally, all surfers can agree that that's like the best way to end the championship tour.
And yeah, that's it. I mean, for me, obviously, I never have. And unlikely now at 40 this year and surfing out the UK and starting at 20, I'll probably never get my chance to put a jersey on WSL. Um, I think from a spectator's point of view, it didn't ever really bother me who wore that jersey towards the end of the season, like you say, whether that was two or three events. Like they clinched it by September, October. It didn't really bother me too much because, like, yeah, fair play. Everyone's worked the backsides off to get there, and then, to be honest, as long as
Yeah,
Pipe was on and was doing what it does best, you're still going to tune in because it. Other than a handful that absolutely know it like the back of their hand, you're always going to get a good show. Just especially if it is sort of 10 to 12 foot, absolutely pumping, and you've got all the greats and all the regular guys and girls just getting absolutely pitted, spat out at the end just behind the barrel, maybe throw in a quick turn or a kick out. It didn't even matter. You're just like, this is amazing. I'd love to be there to feel that vibe and the atmosphere. Um, I can understand.
yeah. There's nothing like being in an event at Pipe.
Yeah,
It's crazy. It's crazy.
it's definitely
The
on the
beach is
bucket list.
shaking. It's like, yeah. And I think that the detail of bringing back the Pipeline Masters, the Pipe Masters, just that one word at the end of it elevates it. Because whatever was going on in the past with the sponsors or the reasons why they couldn't actually call it the Pipe Masters was just like not that big of a deal, but it was a deal, right? And so now that we're able to say the Pipe Masters is back, the winner of that event will be a Pipe Master. That is just a one word detail that has pretty huge sentimental value to it. So I think everyone's very excited about it, and it's like I'm already running scenarios in my mind of like who I think is going to do well, who's going to make it all the way to the end. The risk or the gamble of having the cumulative points is that someone's going to clinch it, but the flip side of that is there's the best rivalries and like head-to-head duels have always come at
Mm.
Pipeline. Whether it's Medina versus Italo, Slater versus Andy Irons, John, like one heat, whoever finishes highest is going to win the world title. Like I love those moments, and so I'm excited that we're going to get to see those again.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, I can see why they'd have the mid-season cut. It's a bit of a, I don't know if it comes off the back of anyone getting complacent. I don't think that many people that have got the opportunity to do that job as a pro surfer would ever become that complacent. But if I suppose it just gives you that extra little nudge, doesn't it? Go, okay, I can't just hold out for my favorite few events and just wait till the back end of the year and just charge. You had to get it in at the beginning, and then cool, you made it through. Cool, start again. It's almost like two separate sections, isn't it? So, but I can see why. And but yeah, like you say, there's been so many sort of epic rivalries going down over the years, and it's just got this whole aura about it. Putting on extra events like a comp with the Pipe Masters. Like there's one at was it the it wasn't Bells, was it? It's one of the Aussie ones, and they had Mick, Steph, and a few others, and they had a heat of their own, didn't they? It was a couple of years back, I think, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they did that at
I think Oki
Snapper.
was in
Um,
Snappers, yeah,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
alone,
like
like,
the
it didn't really make
I
any
think it's like a
difference.
heritage heat or expression session.
Yeah, yeah, and that was cool to watch. And you could have that. They've done similar things at Pipe, haven't they? Where you've had like Mason and the guys and that just come back out, and you're just like, yeah, guys that grow up with this in their backyard know exactly how that wave is going to happen on every single swell direction, wind direction, doesn't matter. They're going to absolutely nail it, and it's going to be incredible to watch. almost makes you feel like you might be able to surf it one day, and then you realise, yeah, no, I'm not. It's still pipeline, no matter how clean and easy that looks to get in. It's really, really not.
Oh yeah.
Oh, amazing. Can you it's more from my own personal curiosity. Like, you spent a bit of time commentating from the Red Bull athletes area. Obviously, none of this was pre-written. There's no script to this episode, so I am putting you on the spot a little bit. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, what sort of bits of equipment do they have in there? You see the bikes, the foam rollers. Obviously, the coaches are hanging out in there, giving them pep talk, and or they've got their headphones on and they're just starting to zone in. Like, it looks like an incredible place to be, and just you probably just want to start. You probably have the Rocky montage going on in the back of your head as soon as you walk in. You see all these guys and girls just getting right in the zone. You're like, oh, I kind of want to get in and train now. If those are a bit sadistic like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think their setup is really all about, the warm up, keeping warm, getting everything moving. There's a lot of stretching, like stretching stuff. I don't know what that, like the bands are called. But of course, the bikes that you always see on the broadcast, the foam rollers, exercise balls. I think there's a couple like little light weights and stuff like that around. And I think the most important thing is there's room for the surfers to stretch, and do their warm up routines. So obviously the hard work, the training, everything is done or is done somewhere else. So this is that 10 to 15 minutes before they grab their jersey, where it's like, and this to me, that like the trend or what I see happening every time is, let's say there's a heat in the water, the surfer is in the heat after the next heat. So it's like they're up there, headphones, sunglasses, either stretching, doing some kind of thing on the bike, maybe like some jumping up and down, calisthenics, stuff like that. And then they go back into the locker room, whatever final thing that they do back there, whether it's meditate or finish the song they're listening to, talk to their coach for a second. Then they come back out, grab their jersey, and paddle out. So it's like the last thing they do before they surf their heat is that little warm up routine. Some guys and girls do it for, 15, 20 minutes. Others do it for maybe just a couple, 2 minutes, just a quick little check in with the body. So it's really like, it's cool. El Salvador is an example of where I was right there the whole time watching. And it's almost like two separate areas, right? It's a big deck. But over here, you have all the surfers, coaches, friends, family, lounging, sitting there on the couches. They're smiling, they're talking, they're having a good time. And then right next to it, you've got the other part of the deck where there's open space for surfers to pace around, like lions getting ready, jump around, get on the bikes. And that whole area is really like prime time viewing for the waves.
Mm.
So it's the physical warm up and the mental last look at the conditions, at what the waves are doing, tide, whatever. So it's kind of like a twofold thing. And that's always right there where the surfers can see the waves. So it's like, again, the physical and the emotional, and then the actual like study of what they're about to paddle out. And that's that last part that they go.
Yeah, I suppose you've just got to get obviously your head in the right place, but having that last few minutes to, like you say, look at it and go, right, okay, well, even in the last 20 minutes, the tide's dropped a little bit. It's, I don't know, there might be a little bowly section coming in wherever you are, and you can just sort of put the final nail in your little sort of game plan before you paddle out. I've only ever done a couple of competitions, and I was at Fistral and Nuki, and on less than ideal days, like 2 foot and onshore on a longboard. So yeah, there is a lot to it, and I'd love to get inside the mind of a pro surfer and find out how they sort of get that. Out of curiosity, one thing that just popped up in mind then is there anyone that has like a really sort of quirky routine or ritual that you've noticed, and they do something just a bit odd that you think, okay, well, if that works for you, buddy, you go ahead?
I mean, obviously the videos that we see of Italo, preheat, Like that's how it really is. You can feel his energy. Headphones, but he's like really, he's doing these facial things, like you're really getting, because he's like a happy, pretty mellow guy.
Mm.
But then when he's preparing for heat and in the heat, he turns it up to a whole new level. That's always interesting to be around and see. I mean, like I think Marco Mignot, rookie on
Yeah.
tour, he had a pretty intense warm up from what I saw in El Salvador again. Like that was pretty cool to see. He's on the bike, really going for it. So that one was interesting in terms of like specific workouts or training things that I saw. Luana Silva, I saw her, and you probably know like the technical term for it, but she had the bands on her legs and she was kind of like crab walking back and forth.
Okay.
And for me, I get super stiff in this like upper leg area, groin ish area, and I feel like if your hips aren't loose, you're not going to surf as good as you can, or skate or anything. Like Kelly Slater always said that the hips were one of the most important parts of surfing well, and so I think like that hip activation is something that I see a lot and that I need to do more of as a 40 plus surfer. Like the on your back with the legs kind of like over on both sides, real intense kind of stretching. And I think a lot of it is really focused on the hips, which we hear a lot about surfers and their core strength, but I think hip flexibility is like an underrated thing that's talked about in surf training. Like any surfer that gets to a certain age and wants to remain, flexible and surfing well, I feel like focusing on the hips is super important.
Well, everything's
Because again,
yeah.
like if I try to go skate and I'm not fully like loosened up and stretched out in my groin and my hips, it's not going to go well.
Yeah. Well, if you look at any movement from, it doesn't matter whether you're getting up out of the chair, rolling out of bed, or you're coming off down the piste in the park and you're about to smash out a 1080. Everything comes from them hips. And like one of the maneuvers that always was elusive to me when I skateboard, I didn't do much. I couldn't ollie, so I just become a old school pool skater, which was my sort of poor excuse to get out of doing cool stuff. But I did always want to try the layback, and I now know, looking back, it was always I wasn't getting my body weight up over the board. So I get up, my hand would go down, it looks steezy as you like, and the board would slide along the coping real nice. But it was locking the tail onto the coping and get my body weight up and over the board, ready to sort of drop back in. The reason I didn't make it was because my hips weren't there. I wasn't lifting with my hips enough to bring the body up and round. Any maneuver, whether that's, so going back to surfing, whether that's a pop up or whether that's a big Ethan Ewing style carve or doing a rotation, it all stems from the hips. I mean, you saying about Marco Mignot, I'm not surprised he was going at it in his warm up. I mean, I haven't really seen much of him up until the El Salvador comp, and that guy was absolutely insane in the air. Like, obviously, he was one of the few that was nailing the aerials despite the wind, because it was quite, was it cross offshore or something? It was quite a
Yeah.
strong day, but he was able to sort of come further away towards the flats, which was actually obviously beneficial. But yeah, the rotations going on with him, I was like, wow, this guy is going to
Yeah.
be someone not to mess with over the next few years as he sort of stamps his way onto the tour. So yeah, excited to see how that pans out for
Yeah,
him.
for sure.
But yeah, look, I know you've got your own episode to go and sort out, so I shall leave you to it, buddy. But if you, just to wind it down, if you've got three pieces of advice for the listeners, whether that's just surfing, life, whatever, what would they be?
I always lean on positivity, disparaging yourself, saying things like I'm too old to do that, or I'm too fat to do that, like I hate my body. I feel all these things, but I try not to say them out loud. I do believe in manifestation, and I believe in, the power of positive attitude. So, instead of before you go surf or before you go skate, instead of going like, oh God, the waves suck, I'm gonna blow it, I feel fat, this board sucks. Like, put those things out of your mind. Try to get yourself into a place of, I'm gonna go have some fun. I think mental looseness can also equate to physical looseness. And when you're feeling loose in your mind and your body, that's when you're going to perform at your best. This is not about being like a professional athlete and all the stressful things that they're going through. This is about the day-to-day person like us, probably you all watching right now, of, like, just trying to stay loose, because when you're loose, again, you're performing your best. So that's kind of my number one thing. It's like positive mindset. I think like trying to stay active and stay physical is a challenge that you can kind of make to yourself. I'm sure where you're at, where you're from, there's a lot of days where it's rainy and windy and crappy. And those are the days that we all like to just sit and watch Netflix and eat, have a beer, whatever. But just trying at least once a day to do a little something is going to be hugely beneficial moving forward. And I think that, I guess, third would be just set yourself free. There's no rules to surfing, skating, snowboarding, really, especially when you become a veteran like us. When you get a little older, there's even less rules. So it doesn't matter what board you're riding, skate, surf, whatever. If you just go out there and you have the freedom to just do it how you want to do it. I think that these days there's a lot less stigma attached to all different types of surfing on all different types of boards. It used to be like, if you're not on a short board, a thruster, with that's inch and a half thick, you suck. Now it's like, there's so many boards out there that there's no excuse for you not to find a board that's going to allow you to have fun. It's like, whatever board you feel comfortable on that's going to allow you to have fun, I think is acceptable these days. As long as you're cool, as long as you're not out there being a jerk, trying to take too many waves, you're going to have fun. And I think it's just about finding that board. So I think these days we have so many options, and there's no reason to limit yourself and limit your fun because the guy in the water said your board's not cool. Just ride what you want to ride and embrace it.
Yeah, we're not being paid to surf, so enjoy it. Like, pay yourself and smile.
We're
Good
paying to
times.
surf, so you might as well try to have some fun.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, mate, it's been absolutely brilliant having a chat with you. And so, if people want to get hold of you or check out your podcast, where can they head to? I'll pop it in the description below anyway.
Yeah, at Chris Coté on Instagram. I've been on Instagram forever, so I just got my name, which is kind of cool. The podcast is called The Monday Mass with Chris Coté and Todd Richards. We are known as the world's greatest action sports podcast. I think we were just named the 9th best snowboard podcast, so that's pretty cool.
Amazing.
I don't know where we rank in surf or skate, but I've heard that you have the best surf training podcast in all of the UK.
I
So
heard the same
congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, everyone's talking about it.
Yeah. Hopefully with guys like yourself coming on. So if you if you fancy dropping a few of the guys a little nudge, like Kelly, mate, come on. We need to talk to that guy because everyone knows he's the guy for looking after the body. Him and Laird would be an epic conversation. So brilliant.
The ultimate.
That's it. Cheers, Chris. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we look forward to catching your next episode of the Monday Mass.
Back at you.
Cheers, buddy. Hi, I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. If you're interested in anything the guest has to say today, then please have a look in the description for their links. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next episode.